What if reincarnation feels familiar for a reason? A new Avatar story captures the world's attention, and millions of people immediately accept one extraordinary premise: one soul, many lives, a different body, a different nation, a different century. The cycle never ends. Almost nobody questions it. No one asks how anyone knows which child carries the spirit of the previous avatar. No one asks why consciousness would return instead of simply disappearing. The audience simply accepts the rule and continues watching. But here's the fascinating part. That idea wasn't invented by modern storytellers. It wasn't created for animation. It wasn't even unique when it first appeared. For thousands of years, civilizations separated by continents, languages, and religions have imagined life unfolding in remarkably similar cycles. Bodies die. Something continues. A child is born. The journey begins again. Whether we call it reincarnation, rebirth, transmigration, or simply another life, humanity has returned to the same idea again and again. Why? Is there something about human psychology that naturally imagines life as a cycle rather than a straight line? Or are these stories trying to answer one of the oldest questions we have ever asked? What, if anything, survives death? Changing clothes. One of the clearest descriptions appears in the Bhagavad Gita, a foundational text of Hindu philosophy. It compares the soul to a person changing clothes. Whether one interprets that literally or symbolically, the image is remarkably elegant. Death is not presented as annihilation, nor as escape. It is transition, searching for the returned child. One of the most unusual parts of the Avatar story is the search. After an avatar dies, elders travel across the world searching for the child who carries the previous life's spirit. At first glance, this seems like imaginative fantasy. Yet something remarkably similar exists today. Within Tibetan Buddhism, the search for the next Dalai Lama follows a carefully established tradition. After the death of a Dalai Lama, senior monks investigate signs, visions, and reports before identifying possible children. Those children may then be presented with collections of objects. Some belonged to the previous Dalai Lama. Others did not. The expectation is not that the child consciously remembers a previous life in ordinary terms. Rather, certain recognitions may emerge naturally. The current 14th Dalai Lama was identified through this traditional process as a young child. Children who remember another life. In the 20th century, psychiatrist Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia devoted decades to investigating reports from children who claimed to remember previous lives. He documented thousands of cases from many different countries. Most followed a surprisingly consistent pattern. He did not claim they proved reincarnation. Instead, he documented them as carefully as possible and invited further investigation. A tradition without an eternal soul. Here the story becomes even more fascinating. Many people assume Buddhism teaches the existence of an immortal soul that travels from one body to another. In fact, classical Buddhist philosophy often teaches almost the opposite. One of its central ideas is anatta, the absence of a permanent, unchanging self. According to this view, what we call the self is not a fixed entity hidden somewhere inside us. It is an ongoing process. Thoughts, memories, habits, sensations, constantly changing. Teachers often compare rebirth not to one person climbing into another body, but to one candle lighting another. The second flame exists because of the first. What makes you you? This question has occupied philosophers for centuries. John Locke proposed that personal identity depends largely upon memory. If your present consciousness remains connected to past experiences, then you remain the same person. Memory creates continuity. Scottish philosopher David Hume reached a radically different conclusion. According to Hume, the self resembles a story woven together from constantly changing experiences. It feels continuous because the mind connects separate moments into a narrative. Why every culture tells similar stories. Remarkably, ideas resembling reincarnation appear in many parts of the world. Ancient Hindu traditions, Buddhist philosophy, Jain teachings, certain schools of Greek philosophy, including followers of Pythagoras and Plato, various indigenous traditions, different beliefs, different explanations, a surprisingly familiar pattern, the witness behind the thoughts. Interestingly, one valuable lesson appears regardless of whether reincarnation is literally true. Many philosophical and psychological traditions encourage cultivating the perspective of the observer. In Buddhist meditation, practitioners learn to notice thoughts without immediately identifying with them. Stoic philosophers encouraged observing emotional reactions before acting upon them. Modern psychological approaches such as acceptance and commitment therapy teach similar skills. Observe the thought. Notice the emotion. Allow it to pass. Do not immediately become it. This practice requires no belief in reincarnation. It simply creates a small space between awareness and mental activity. Often, that space is enough to reduce anxiety, rumination, and impulsive reactions. Perhaps that practical insight explains why these traditions have endured for centuries. Why the story never dies. Stories about rebirth continue appearing because they address questions every generation eventually encounters. Who am I? What changes? What remains? What happens when memory disappears? If every cell in your body gradually changes throughout life, in what sense are you still the same person you were 10 years ago? Reincarnation stories take that familiar puzzle and extend it one step further. If identity can persist through years of physical change, could it, in principle, persist through death? Whether the answer is yes, no, or something more complicated remains one of humanity's oldest unresolved debates. Perhaps the enduring popularity of the Avatar cycle has less to do with fantasy than with recognition. Across cultures and centuries, humans have repeatedly imagined life not as a straight line, but as a circle. The names differ, the rituals differ, the philosophies often disagree. Yet the central mystery remains astonishingly consistent. What makes you, you? Is it memory? A soul? Consciousness? Relationships? An unbroken chain of causes and effects? Or is the self something that changes so completely from moment to moment that asking what returns after death may be asking the wrong question altogether? We may never settle that debate. But perhaps that's why reincarnation stories continue captivating us. Not because they prove what happens after death, but because they force us to examine the far more immediate mystery. Who, exactly, is living this life right now? Nearly every civilization has imagined that something continues beyond a single lifetime, yet they often disagree about what that something actually is. What do you think? Is personal identity rooted in memory, consciousness, the soul, or something else entirely? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every one, and if you enjoy exploring the hidden connections between philosophy, religion, psychology, and the biggest questions about human existence, subscribe for the next exploration.